On this Wednesday night, the fight against inflation. The Bank of Canada holds its key interest rate steady for now.
This is good news, but is not job done.
What needs to happen to prevent a recession? Standing in solidarity.
Taiwan's fight is Canada's fight.
What's at stake as China threatens to reclaim Taiwan? The power of electric vehicles. What's driving up concerns about the risks to pedestrians and other motorists? And toxins in toys.
They can remain in your blood, in your lipid tissue for many years.
The harmful chemical lurking in some children's products.
Global National with Donna Friesen.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. We begin with news about interest rates and inflation. The Bank of Canada did not raise its key rate today. It's holding steady at 4.5%, where it's been since January, after rising nearly non-stop since March of last year. But the Bank of Canada governor warned today it could hold at that level for a while or even rise again because inflation hasn't cooled as much as he'd like. In our top story tonight, Anne Gaviola explains what that could mean for you.
The economy is expected to grow modestly, even as inflation comes down. This is good news, but is not job done.
The head of the Bank of Canada describing a scenario in which inflation comes down, but Canada avoids a recession. But a lot needs to happen to get us there. Canadians' perception that inflation will stay high needs to change. Wage increases must stabilize, and businesses need to stop hiking prices.
Canadians should expect more rate holds to come unless there's some surprising data in the months ahead.
The perception that this may be the end of the bank's tightening cycle may boost the housing market.
I think it will instill some confidence in home buyers and even home sellers as well, too. It kind of signals that we may be at the end of these rate hikes.
But the central bank is leaving the door open to more hikes if needed to tame inflation.
If monetary policy is not restrictive enough to get us all the way back to the 2% target, we are prepared to raise the policy rate further to get there.
On the heels of the recent collapse of 3 regional banks in the U.S. and the bailout of Credit Suisse, a systemically important bank, many wonder if that's prudent. This week, the International Monetary Fund warned of economic turbulence lurking beneath the surface, especially for the world's wealthiest nations.
We have, though, for quite a while now talked about high levels of household debt being a vulnerability, and it is something that we need to watch.
Market watchers expect a rate cut by year's end, bringing the Bank of Canada's key interest rate from 4.5% to 4.25%. But that could come with a recession or economic downturn. Now, Macklin says that is not the most likely scenario. But as we've seen in recent weeks, a lot can change on a dime. Donna?
Sure can. And Gaviola in Toronto, thanks. Wages are a major sticking point for 120,000 federal public workers who their union says have voted overwhelmingly in favor of strike action.
Our members' wages have been stuck in neutral while the cost of living continues to soar. We're asking for decent wages that prevent workers from falling further behind.
The Public Service Alliance of Canada, one of this country's largest unions, says its members, including tradespeople, Coast Guard workers and clerks, have been without a contract since 2021. They're now in a legal strike position. As well, 35,000 federal tax workers will be in a legal strike position on Friday. The union says it still wants to reach a deal with the government. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau answered questions today about China's latest military drills around Taiwan.
China's aggressive actions in the Taiwan Straits and around Taiwan are problematic, and we really hope that there will be a de-escalation of tensions in the region. We will continue to stand for our values. We will continue to stand up for democracies everywhere around the world.
The Prime Minister made the comments as a group of Canadian MPs met Taiwan's president today to voice their support. Jeff Semple is in the Taiwanese capital tonight. Jeff.
Donna, the Taiwanese president met last week with U.S. officials, enraging the Chinese government, which launched 3 days of military exercises around Taiwan. Well, today it was Canada's turn to engage in high-stakes, potentially provocative diplomacy.
Like old friends reunited, Taiwanese President Tsai Ing-wen welcomed a delegation from Ottawa, 10 MPs from Canada's 4 main political parties.
We don't always agree on everything, but in this circumstance, I think it's very clear that all parties agree that support for Taiwan is important.
They presented a report passed unanimously last month by Parliament's Special Committee on Canada-China Relations. It called for closer ties with Taiwan and an end to Chinese military aggression.
Even as we arrived here, there's 160 warplanes flying overhead, and they're carrying on naval exercises. Our message to them is that Taiwan's fight is Canada's fight.
While Canada's concern is focused on the Chinese government's alleged foreign interference, Taiwan faces the prospect of a military invasion by Beijing, which considers the island nation its own. Canada is a very important democratic partner, the Taiwanese president said. Faced with continued authoritarian expansionism, it is even more critical for democracies to actively unite. Opinion polls have consistently shown the vast majority of Taiwanese want to remain a democracy, separate from China. But these high-profile meetings with democratic world leaders have proved polarizing here. Some feel the photo ops aren't worth Beijing's wrath.
This issue has been dividing in Taiwan as well, because some think this is kind of too provocative against China.
The leader of Taiwan's pro-China reunification party, a former convicted gang leader, says the Canadian delegation should go home. They should mind their own business and solve their own problems before talking about these things, he says. Maybe I should tell Canada how to deal with its indigenous people.
Are you worried that this visit might further provoke the Chinese government?
Not at all, because these visits are part of long-standing policy. What has changed is Beijing's position. They've become increasingly belligerent with their wolf warrior diplomacy, and we can't appease that behavior by kowtowing to it.
Past visits by Canadian politicians to Taiwan, like the one just last year, have largely focused on issues such as trade and the economy. But the conversation this time is different, talking security and defense. This relationship being reshaped by an increasingly bold and brazen Beijing. Donna?
Jeff Semple in Taipei, Taiwan tonight. Thanks, Jeff. Russia is being accused of committing more atrocities. 2 videos posted to Russian social media have Ukraine comparing Russia to the so-called Islamic State. Global News has not independently verified the videos. We're not going to air them in full. What they appear to show is disturbing, including a Ukrainian prisoner of war being decapitated by a Russian soldier. As Crystal Gamansing reports, Ukraine's president claims it's part of a grim pattern the world cannot ignore.
Global News is obscuring the images as they are simply too disturbing for broadcast. A man in a military-style uniform kneels on another, pinning the victim down as he saws at his neck with a knife. There is something that no one in the world can ignore, how easily these beasts kill. Ukraine's security service has opened yet another war crimes investigation because of the videos. It's not known who made or posted them to social media. The Kremlin spokesperson described them as awful and called for their authentication. In the world of fakes that we inhabit, says Dmitry Peskov, we need to check the veracity of this footage. In the beheading video, another individual is seen grabbing a flak jacket and showing the camera the Ukrainian trident patch. In a separate video, there is what appears to be a destroyed armor personnel carrier and 2 bodies visible without heads. The videos are likely a few months old as the ground is dry and there's greenery in the frame. The grisly recordings surfaced just days after Russia took up the presidency position at the UN Security Council. Each member state gets a month-long rotation. The Ukrainian foreign minister tweeted saying it's absurd that Russia, which is worse than ISIS, is presiding over the UNSC. On the front lines, neither side appears to be gaining or losing much ground in Bakhmut. It's been the site of one of the bloodiest and longest battles since Russia launched its full invasion of Ukraine 14 months ago. Volodymyr Zelensky says terror must be defeated in Ukraine, and as he highlighted the horrors in the video, he again called for the world to support his soldiers. Crystal Gamansing, Global News, London.
The American president has begun a 3-day political and personal visit to the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland and called for political compromise.
Today, I come to Belfast to pledge to all the people of Northern Ireland, the United States of America will continue to be your partner in building the future the young people of our world deserve. It matters to us, to Americans, and to me personally.
President Biden is extremely proud of his Irish heritage. 2 of his great-grandparents are Irish. He spent the first half of the day in the UK meeting with the British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak before heading to the Irish Republic for meetings with officials and distant relatives. Biden is there to celebrate the 25th anniversary of the Good Friday Agreement, but the power-sharing government it established has broken down and hasn't met for more than a year.
As electric vehicles become more common on the road, their incredible weight is posing new risks to other drivers. I'm Jackson Proskow. Ahead on Global National, we'll take you along for a crash test.
In the U.S. state of Indiana, a fire at a former recycling plant has prompted evacuation orders for thousands of people. There are no reports of injuries, but because of all the plastic at the facility, authorities warn it will be days before the fire is out. Officials say the building's owner was warned multiple times about unsafe conditions. The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency has proposed some of America's toughest federal automobile pollution rules. If approved, the new rules would not set a quota on electric vehicle sales, but rather mandate limits on greenhouse gas emissions. Depending on how automakers comply, the EPA projects that at least 67% of new passenger vehicles sold in the U.S. would be electric by 2032. EVs make up less than 6% of cars sold in the U.S. right now. As more electric vehicles hit the road, there's growing concern about the risks they could pose in a crash. EVs can be heavier than gas-powered vehicles, especially as range is extended and batteries get bigger. Jackson Proskow takes us along for a crash test to see how EV safety is being evaluated.
It's testing day at the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety in Virginia,
558,
where they're preparing crash dummies in a vehicle loaded with sensors and cameras.
because we had this open.
What's different about today's test is that it involves an electric SUV, which, thanks to its massive batteries, is far heavier than your average gas-powered vehicle. At test time, the vehicle is catapulted down the track and into a wall, simulating how the car and its occupants would fare in a head-on collision.
What we've found is that overall their safety performance has been very good.
Safe for their passengers, but because of their enormous weight, there's growing concern about what happens when EVs crash into other cars and pedestrians. How much extra weight are we talking? Well, in this electric SUV, the battery pack alone makes up about a third of the total weight, nearly 1,000 kilograms. That's approaching the entire weight of a compact car.
Anytime you have very big mass disparity in a vehicle-to-vehicle crash, the laws of physics have not changed. The occupants in the lighter vehicle are always going to come out worse.
As automakers bring out more electric models, the number of bigger, heavier vehicles on the road is growing rapidly.
I am concerned about the increased risk of severe injury and death for all road users from heavier curb weights.
The U.S. National Transportation Safety Board is increasingly worried, not just about the weight of EVs, but also their incredible acceleration. The 4,000-kilogram electric Hummer can go from 0 to 100 kilometers per hour in just 3 seconds.
Simply the acceleration that's enabled by electric batteries and their motors is a problem. There's so many scenarios in which that speed and that acceleration is just dangerous to others on the road.
The auto industry argues customers want the range that only big batteries can deliver. In fact, a new generation of lithium iron phosphate batteries is about to roll out in vehicles everywhere. They're even heavier than the batteries used today. It sounds like there's still a lot to learn.
There is absolutely a whole lot to learn. What I'm hopeful for is that some of these vehicle masses don't keep going up and up, that we can have some lighter batteries with, maybe faster charging times.
Until then, researchers will continue to put EVs through their paces, making sure that trying to solve one problem hasn't created another. Jackson Proskow, Global News, Ruckersville, Virginia.
After months of speculation, ahead the final answer on whether Harry and Meghan will attend the King's coronation. Buckingham Palace has ended months of speculation over whether Prince Harry will attend his father's coronation. The palace confirmed today Harry will be at the ceremony on May 6th, though his wife Meghan will stay behind in California with their children, Princess Lilibet and Prince Archie. It's Archie's 4th birthday on Coronation Day. Harry hasn't been seen with the royal family since his book detailing family backstabbing, jealousy and dysfunction was published, and since the couple's Netflix docuseries was released. Harry has said his royal relatives have so far shown no willingness to reconcile. Well, all parents know the challenge of keeping little kids from chewing on or eating things that are unsafe and assume things we buy for babies and infants are safe. Researchers at the University of Toronto have found that's not always the case. They found high levels of toxic chemicals in electronic devices, clothing, and children's toys, chemicals that have been banned in Canada for a decade. Catherine Ward explains what researchers discovered and what it could mean for you.
I got a lot of the product samples from volunteers around my lab. I just asked them to bring in whatever they felt comfortable taking a piece of and for the study. And then I also went to Dollarama and I just swept a bunch of toys off the shelf and analyzed those.
Researcher Stephen Kutarna's analysis found short-chain chlorinated paraffins, a chemical that has been banned in Canada with limited exemptions since 2013 because of risks to the environment and human health. The chemicals are not supposed to be in toys. Results from this study showed they are there.
We found quite high concentrations of these compounds in toys meant for children and toddlers, in particular teething toys.
Out of 96 household items tested, 84 had the toxin. Chemist Carl Job says part of the concern is that the compound doesn't break down easily.
Once you've consumed them by inhalation of dust, through hand-to-mouth contact with the electronics that you're playing with, they can remain in your blood, in your lipid tissue.
Advocates are calling for more accountability.
Retailers and manufacturers need to be testing and demonstrating safety, and that retailers need to be demanding that information.
And enforcement.
We don't have a strong toxics law that enforces this universal principle that retailers are on the hook for what's on their shelves, and that there are strong laws that protect us and protect particularly children's health.
We asked Dollarama for a comment about the findings, and it provided a statement saying product compliance is its utmost priority and it is committed to improving testing. Dollarama also says it has been working with manufacturers to eliminate certain chemicals and heavy metals, even within allowable limits. In a statement, Health Canada told Global News it is reviewing the study and will take appropriate action as required. Catherine Ward, Global News, Toronto.
Ominous off-season next, what the Toronto Raptors face ahead of the NBA's play-in tournament. It seems there is no limit on what some people will pay for sports memorabilia. These are Michael Jordan's Last Dance sneakers, worn in Game 2 of the 1998 NBA Finals. They are now the most expensive shoes ever sold at auction. They went for $2.2 million US. That smashes the previous record for a pair of Air Jordans sold in 2021. The basketball legend's final season with the Chicago Bulls was dubbed The Last Dance. And the Chicago Bulls are the first of two teams the Toronto Raptors must beat to keep their NBA season alive. The Raptors weren't good enough to guarantee a spot in the postseason. That puts them in playoff purgatory. And as Eric Sorensen explains, there's lots on the line in their first ever play-in game tonight.
I'm an NBA champ!
Ah, those halcyon days when the Raptors were perennial contenders. In every postseason, hope springs eternal for a return to glory, even if the team is not what it once was.
I'm excited to even just have a shot again at being in the finals.
This year, players often had to explain away a mediocre season.
Just overall low energy, low compete level.
And it seems a loss of confidence. Over the last 10 years, the Raptors finished near the top of the Eastern Conference every year, usually top 3, until the last 3 seasons, 12th, 5th, and 9th. Ninth under a new play-in format does give the Raptors one must-win opportunity against Chicago. A win would mean another must-win one game against Miami, and then they would earn the uninviting distinction of starting the playoff series against the NBA's top team, Milwaukee. The players are ready, if not brimming with confidence.
Season up and down, having a great opportunity, play some basketball, stay in the postseason.
There is a different aura around this Raptors team. The play-in game begins what could be a turning point, a franchise preparing possibly to break apart. So different from 4 years ago when the pieces came together to win a championship. In 2019, the team's executive Masai Ujiri orchestrated a huge trade for superstar Kawhi Leonard. MVP! And with other additions, the Raptors, the city of Toronto, and the country soared to the top of the basketball world.
We got to, get some guys to bring some energy and play the right way.
Now, a different tone from the coach, and rumors abound that some of the stars could leave this summer.
There might be some changing of the guard. There's been reports that potentially Nick Nurse is looking elsewhere. Fred VanVleet, Gary Trent Jr., and Jakob Poeltl can all walk in the summer if they choose to.
Fans like Junaid Shah are prepared for change.
We lack a superstar right now. So even if we make this run, I don't feel like it's going to be deep.
The Raptors season could end abruptly, but for basketball in this city, it has been a long and triumphant run. Eric Sorensen, Global News, Toronto.
And that's Global National for this Wednesday. I'm Donna Friesen. Tonight's Your Canada is Bronte Harbour in Oakville, Ontario. We'd love to see Your Canada. Please email it to us. And thanks for watching. Hope to see you here again tomorrow. Bye-bye.